Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pastor Bruce. Welcome to AM Voice and One Man's Opinion. This is going to probably be the most revealing show that I'm going to put out there, and I want you to understand that. I also want you to understand there's a saying that goes around out there that let's agree to disagree. I will never tell you that. You may have your opinion. I have mine. Thank you. That's fine. But to sit there and look you in the face, anybody, I don't care who you are, if someone looks you in the face and says, let's agree to disagree, what they're saying is, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up, and let's move on. Is basically what it comes down to. I will never tell you that. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is the letter or the article that came out called Donors of Anti-Trump Resistance Group Revealed. Now, in the opening paragraph, it says the hidden donors to a prominent antitrust resistance organization are revealed in unredacted tax forms obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. Now, what that says is this. They're not going to tell you who their donors are, but because they received unredacted, which means it wasn't blacked out, they found out who was given to the Center of the Community Change, which is a Washington, D.C. based 501c3 group. And we know Hillary Clinton went down to Wall Street, made hundreds of thousands of dollars giving speeches on Wall Street. And look at who the two big donors are. W.K. Kellogg for $3 million and Ford Motor Foundation, which is another $2,350,000. And the next largest one was the liberal mega donor George Soros gave $1.750 million to the Center for Community Change. Now think about that. She wants nothing to do with Wall Street. Even Obama says, I want nothing to do with Wall Street. Yet he got $400,000 to talk for an hour down on Wall Street. Think about it. And his wife, she's making money down there on Wall Street. She's talking to salesmen. And she's adding a political tone to this talk to salesmen. And what does that have to do with sales? Absolutely nothing. But it's their way of getting out there and promoting hatred for the American way of life and hatred for the American white man. And I will say it again, and I'll continue to say it. Yes, we owned slaves back 250 years ago. For all of you black people out there, get over it. Okay? Get over it. It happened 250 years ago. Should we blame the Romans or the Italians today for the Roman Empire? Should we tell the Romans today or the Italians today that because of the Roman Empire, they're going to have to pay reparations to the rest of the world? Should we go and talk to Hitler's people and Germans and sit there and go, well, because of what Hitler did, the German people have to go out and pay for it? That didn't happen 250 years ago. That was more recent. 1945, that ended. So why is it that we have our collective heads stuck in the anal passage of 250 years ago and whine and cry and carry on about slavery? You've had 250 years to make something of yourself. And there are people out there, okay? We know we don't like what he did, but Bill Cosby became something. He became a doctor. And Ben Carson, one of the top brain surgeons in the country. And Oprah, one of the most popular women, and Whoopi Goldberg, one of the most popular women on television today. Now, these are just a handful of people that got out of 250 years ago, but will continue to promote, except for Ben Carson. They'll promote slavery of 250 years ago to make the white man pay for something they had nothing to do. Their ancestors may have. How about we go back and find out who sold the slaves to the Dutch trading company or traded the slaves to the Dutch trading company. Let's hold them responsible for slavery in America, because if they hadn't given away other African Americans, or Africans, excuse me, then we wouldn't have had slaves here. And the only slaves we would have had were the enslaves that were white. And when I say the enslaves, if you understand the definition of the term back then, it was someone who was unintelligent and illiterate. They couldn't read. And there were plenty of white people back then who couldn't read, that were slaves to the plantation owners and did what the plantation owners did. And they got beat just like the black people did. So I'm sitting there saying it again. Get your head out of the collective 250 years ago and move forward. You can't move forward if you continue to live in the past. Yet that's what they're doing. And they're sitting there going, well, let's get rid of all of these statues and everything that shows what the South was like. Because the South was Democratic controlled, people. The South was Democratic controlled, and they wanted to keep slavery. Those same Democrats went into Congress. Robert Byrd, I believe, was one of them, who was a senator for years from the South, was also a high-ranking member of the KKK. If you've listened to any of my podcasts, you'll understand this. And I've listed them all who were members of the KKK. They wanted to keep slavery in the South. And because the Republicans under Lincoln said, nope, we're freeing the slaves, we had a revolution in this country. It was white people defending the honors and the rights of the black community in the South. And they were northern white people, by the way. It's amazing how the majority of the Democrats that were in the South now control New York City. How they moved up, because you see, if you take away the base, the power of the Republican Party, the Democrats are going to win. And that's exactly what they're doing. And look what's happening. Nobody likes Obama in Washington, D.C., so now they're eyeing a home in New York. They're looking to move out of Washington, D.C. Probably because he's submitting a $1.1 or $1.3 million budget, and he's not doing anything with it but spending it on himself. He's giving the taxpayers bills for him flying off to Europe. Don't need to if he's making $400,000 plus his retirement from being president of the United States. And wasn't he a senator? Doesn't he get a retirement from being a senator? So he's making a lot of money out there, people, okay? We don't need to be paying $1.3 million for his budget. Let him go out and just like, and I'm saying that not only about Obama, I'm saying that two Bushes and Clinton. Clinton has made millions of dollars off of speaking engagements, off of their nonprofit. They don't need to be hitting the federal government up with budgets in order to maintain what they have. They're making enough money to do it themselves. So we need to wipe that away. If you're making over $1 million on your own because you were in Congress, you no longer need to submit a budget. You live off of your own. Plus your retirement check. I'm not including the retirement. You're making $1 million in speaking fees, book tours, and so on and so forth. That's where you make your money. And think about this. I believe Hillary Clinton's book tours that she's writing, what happened, I don't even remember the name of the book. I think it's because she promised a lot of people money or promises for money. And because she didn't become president, she's got to pay that money back. And that's where that money's going to. She's paying back a lot of the money. The countries that were feeding her nonprofit organization dried up once she lost the presidency. Think about that. And she's got an organization that supports her, a nonprofit that was created by allies of Hillary Clinton to mobilize the Latino and African American voters in this country. They don't care about the white people. The white people is what they want to destroy. Because they think because they are the social democrats that they can be put into the position of governing over this nation. And because they're getting rid of the white people in this country, either through uh, interracial relationships or this clown out there in Vegas killing off white people. I think it's all part of a conspiracy plan to destroy the democratic republic that we have and create socialist nation here in America with the social democrats in Congress running the show in order to align themselves up with Europe and the UN's agenda for 2030 of making it a one world government. And people like George Soros, and actually there's two groups out there. He's got that one and another Soros group, 1630 Fund, gave $610,000. So between the two, they gave over $2 million to this anti-Trump fund. Why is there such a push? Did anybody bother to think or ask that question? Why is there such a push? Why is there such a hatred? And they're throwing everything at them and nothing sticks. The Russian probe. The Russians influenced the election. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. It wasn't the Russians that caused 47% of the women in this country to vote. Almost 50% of the women who Hillary thought she had, and Michelle comes out and says, well, you're not thinking for yourself. You're thinking because men want you to think this way, is an insult to the women of this country. And it shows how little concern they have for your intellectual capabilities and for you to take the information and make rational decisions. So here's one way of attacking Trump by this group. Another is Amir Zahar. Now, if you ever get a chance to watch Tucker Carlson, go to YouTube, call him up. There's an article out there. Is there a white man double standard in terrorism? And the answer to that question is no. We have learned over the course, and what this Amir guy is saying is that we hold white Americans at a different standard than we do Muslims. Not the case. And he compares what happened in Vegas to Orlando and throws in a religious component where we don't look at that in the white man's case. But here's the difference between the two, which this clown refused to let Tucker ask the questions. In Orlando, he called 911 and said, I'm doing this in the name of Allah. They knew why he did what he did. And that is the religious component. Now, as for the guy in Vegas, there's no manifesto. There's no suicide note. There's nothing to indicate why he did what he did. So we can't say that there's a double standard. We got to find the facts out. This Amir Zahar, University of Detroit Mercy, see, he doesn't care about facts. All he cares about is throwing out slanderous remarks about white people getting a double standard. And that's not the truth. We learned that in Peterson when the news media was up in arms, and even the idiots in basketball and in football were out there supporting the black man with his arms up in the air getting shot in the back. And we found out 3 days later that wasn't the fact. He was never shot in the back. But yet the fake news about that went on. They saw a black man with his hands up and the guy was standing there pointing his gun at him, so he got shot in the back. Thank you very kindly. That's the facts. That's the news. And no, it wasn't. So before we start accusing people and pointing fingers and making decisions, we need to know the facts. That's if Amir Zahar knew anything about criminal investigation, you ask the 5 questions. 6? Who, what, when, where, how, and why. Why is the biggest one. Why did they do? The Orlando guy called up and said, I'm doing this in the name of Allah. We know why. And he went and shot up the nightclub. We knew that the 2 planes that hit into the World Trade Center, the one that hit into the Pentagon and the one that almost hit into, that was downed in Pennsylvania, that was headed for the White House, we know those were religious motivated attacks. We know this because of the evidence that was presented to us at the time. We don't know why this guy did what he did. So is there a double standard? No. There is the investigative standard. Why is this happening? And that's what Tucker Carlson was trying to get out. But Zamir, he's sitting there going, it's racially motivated. There's a double standard for white people in this country over every. And this promotes the hatred. Let's ask him, who you vote for? Do you vote for Republicans? I guarantee you this Amir Zahar is not voting Republican. Do you honestly believe that this guy that went out there and shot up white people at a concert, a country music concert in Vegas, is a Republican? Because if you look at it, people, no, Republicans are respectful of their weapons. Yes, they are armed. Yes, they will use them if provoked. But that doesn't mean that they're going to go out and shoot each other up at concerts. So he had to be politically motivated, just like the shooter at the softball practice game was politically motivated to kill Republicans. So it's Democrat control, people. It's creating the fear in this country by the Democratic Party. And until you open your eyes and see the truth about this, you will not understand the destruction that the Democrats want to do upon the American way of life. Now, you've got another college professor out there that put up the USS Constitution on his front lawn for Halloween. And he had Comey walking the plank. Well, Comey should walk the plank. He should be arrested and he should be imprisoned for what he did. He lied to the American people. As the head of the FBI, he faked investigations and he promoted a false narrative in the Hillary Clinton investigation. He should be arrested, he should be charged, and he should be in prison. Yes, he should walk the plank. But then the college professor said the next thing is the DACA. Now, this is where the stupidity and the ignorance of the academia in colleges is all about. Because if you understand what President Trump is saying, if you understand what DACA was all about, first and foremost, a year before Obama signed an executive order, said we can't do this, it's illegal. And then a year later, in order to get the Latino vote, what did he do? He signed DACA into the executive law and gave it an expiration date and said it's going to end. So Congress, you need to do something. Now, in 2012, it was a Democratic-controlled House. It was a Democratic-controlled under Harry Reid's Senate. And the House passed the DACA bill, sent it over to Reid, and along with the other 139 bills that were sitting on Harry Reid's desk, never went to the Senate for a vote. The Democrats did not want to have the DACA bill in effect, because then they can't control the Latinos in this country. And Obama knew that. That's why he wrote the executive order. And now that it's done, it's over with. It doesn't exist anymore because Obama, your Democrat, your loving Democratic president, put an expiration date on it because he wanted Congress to pass a law. Now, here's the ignorance of the Latino community and this college professor. President Trump said, no more. It's expired. We're going to let it go. We're not going to renew it. Congress, you need to get together and pass a law to protect the dreamers. Okay, fine. Now they're up in arms because he's not renewing an executive order. Ladies and gentlemen, an executive order really doesn't have to be obeyed. You can just turn around and say, oh, done with. We're not going to do this anymore, and walk away. We saw it in the military, especially in the military police, where I had a commander and an operations officer, a lieutenant colonel and a major. And the lieutenant colonel came out and said, I want this done today. Okay, and he would write in the daily logbook of what actions he wanted to have happen. And then about an hour later, the operations officer would come in and say, no, forget this, don't do that, do this over here. And then the next day, the commander would come in and say, well, why'd you change this? We didn't. The major changed it. No, I don't want that. I want this. And they fought back and forth. That's executive orders. That's the commander in chief saying, this is what I want, obey it. And if you don't have to, and of course, I hate to tell you this, they were both black. And they were fighting amongst themselves as to who was in power, the colonel or the major. Well, colonel's outranked major, so he's in power. But that was the struggle that was going on in the organization. And everybody sitting there going, this is ridiculous. It really is. That's what executive orders are all about. People coming up saying, I want this done, does not necessarily mean that it has to be done. And as we've seen, how many executive orders did Donald Trump just erase right out of the book, saying, get rid of it. We're amending this. We're getting rid of it. But DACA, he said, we're giving you 6 months, and then I'll take a look at it again. In other words, Congress, you have 6 months to create a law protecting the dreamers. So now Nancy Pelosi makes an effort to cross over to work with Donald Trump to create a law to help the dreamers, and the Latino community attacks her because she's crossing over to work with the Republicans. Do you see the irony in this? Do you see the stupidity and the ignorance at work? And she can't say anything about it because she created this hatred of the Republican Party, so they can't cross over. They created the hatred by saying we are the obstructionist party. That's why I've said in past, watch to see what the Democrats do to pass the DACA. Now, we've pretty much gone into a month already. What's happened? Absolutely nothing. So is President Trump going to have to sit there and say, well, I'm going to have to write an executive order because you people just aren't doing what you're supposed to do? And that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the president. It is Congress who are sitting there and manipulating the American people to make them think, and the Democrats in Congress, and make them think that they're out there for them, and they really aren't. They hate the American people. They want socialism. Now, there was another college professor that came out, and I apologize, I can't, I think he was from Vermont. I'm not sure where he's from, so I'm really not going to get into it. I believe it's under Gutfield's The Heroes and Zeros of the Las Vegas Tragedy. Now, this college professor said it was an angry white man. Now, who is he angry with? Is he angry with other white people that shot up Vegas? That's what I'm talking about. Is he angry at other white people? Is that why he shot white people? And I hate to tell you, there were people from Canada there as well. All right, you haven't heard that because they're promoting America. But Canadians were there as well. How many Canadians were shot trying to enjoy this concert? But this idiot from this university is sitting there saying he's an angry white man. Well, like I said, I don't know any angry white men that are going to shoot other white men. And you have to ask yourself, all right, he's in his 60s. He's retired. He's a millionaire. He gambles. He's on anxiety meds. So what is his motivation? We know everything about him, but what is his motivation? We know that he doesn't have an online presence. There's no Facebook on him. So what's going on with this guy? What's happening with this guy? We don't know. There's no letter of suicide. There's no manifesto of who he's fighting for or why he's doing this. So I have to say it's politically motivated, just like the shooting on the softball field was politically motivated by a Democrat to kill Republicans. Because if you eliminate the white man in this country, the blacks and the Latinos under a white-controlled Congress, Nancy Pelosi, crybaby Chuck Schumer, will take control of this country and run us into a socialist nation. That's what it's all about, people. And 47% of the women vote understood what the Democrats are doing and voted against Democrats. They voted how they felt. And we had more blacks vote for President Trump than they anticipated because of all of the black votes that went towards Obama. This is the third term of Obama. But the black people saw what was happening in this country. They saw their wages diminished. They saw their people going on food stamps and more of their people going on welfare. They want to make something out of their lives. They don't want to be slaves to the federal government. And they voted against Hillary Clinton. And the Latinos that have a half a brain understand that the Republicans want them for their smarts. They don't want them for their votes. And so they had more Latino votes. And think about this. In black-controlled states like Michigan and Illinois, I believe as well, wasn't it? The second one she didn't bother to go to because they were the majority black. She thought she won the election in those states, so she didn't even bother to go up there to run her campaign because she had no voice for them. None. She walked out and called half of the population of Americans deplorables. She told her people, sat there and said the religious community needs to get on board and stop their ridiculous attitude and get on board with the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi says if you don't believe in abortion, you don't belong in the Democratic Party. Do you understand where the Democrats are? They don't care about you. They care about what their agenda is. And because of that, you have the CBS reporter who got fired, lawyer who got fired because she said, I hold no sympathy because they're Republicans that tote guns. She deserves to get fired. These two college professors need to be fired. That one that put up the USS Constitution on his lawn for Halloween needs to be fired because they're preaching and teaching the wrong stuff to our people. They're teaching the hatred of the American way. And I'll end it by saying this. Yes, slavery was wrong. But back then, well, let's put it this way. Slavery today is wrong. Back then, it might have been a necessity. Back then, it worked. It was a Democratic-controlled South that owned slaves. Understand that. A Democratic-controlled South that owned slaves. It was the Democrats who started the revolution in the South because the Republican Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. So get your head out of that. It's done with. It's over with. Move forward. Look at what good has happened in this country. It was the Republicans who in the 1930s wanted to pass the civil rights laws, and the Democrats refused to go along with it. And since the Republicans didn't have the majority of the Congress, they couldn't pass it. But in the 60s, when they saw that they had to do something, the Democrats had to cross over to the Republican side and said, join us, and we'll together we'll work to pass your 1930 civil rights laws. And that's exactly what happened. But the Democrats take the honor of passing it. If you look at the vote, people, a lot of Democrats did not vote for it. It was the majority Republicans that helped them pass this. It was white people that passed the civil rights laws. It was white people that opened up the schools for integration. It was white people that worked with the slaves in the South in the Underground Railroad, right? White Republicans that brought them to the North so they could be free. It was white Republicans who marched along with the blacks in Selma, Alabama, and who crossed over the bridge and were beaten because the Democratic South did not want the black man to be equal to the white man. And they disguised it by using Christianity, the KKK. No, if anybody knows anything about the teachings of Jesus Christ, we are to intermix. But that's not what the Democratic South wanted. They did not want the black man to be equal to the white man. They still don't want him. Why do you think it is in Democratic-controlled cities that blacks are killing blacks and nothing's being done about it? You talk about a white guy going out there and killing 58 and saying there is a double standard for white terrorists, but yet over 4,000 deaths in Detroit, I believe it was, Chicago, 4,000 deaths each year for the last 3 years, black on black deaths. Who's saying anything about it? But then again, Chicago was Democratic controlled. That's why. You have to understand there is a conspiracy, and this conspiracy is using racism, hate, discrimination, sexism to destroy or try to destroy the Republican Party and the president. And the ignorant, yellow-back Republican leaders in Congress are sitting there doing absolutely nothing about it. And they're allowing it. And that kind of brings me up to the Ghostbusters cartoon I was watching with my boys. Good versus evil. And evil was doing everything they could to win. Everything they could to win. They were cheating. They were lying and cheating and stealing the bases and everything. And one of the Ghostbusters turned to the other and said, well, we got to do that too. We got it. He said, no, because as soon as we start cheating, we lose. So the Republicans have that concept, that idea. They're not going to cheat. They're not going to lie to you. They're not going to create false narratives. They're not going to promote racism or sexism or discrimination in any way, shape, or form. Because once they start doing that, they lose. You want a good party to follow? Follow the Republicans. You want a bad party to follow? Follow the party that goes after the Latino vote and the African American vote and doesn't give a damn about the white vote. And that's the Democrats, the social Democrats. Because why? Because they have dumbed you down in the inner cities to the point where you will follow them right into socialism, and they will take over and steal from you everything that they possibly can and put you into poverty. And you will hate them. By that time, your guns will be gone, your rights will be gone, your dignity will be gone, and the Democrats will control you for the rest of your life. Now, this one college professor said this is white anger, this white guy killing white people. If it's white anger, he'd be killing something other than white people. This is a Democrat thing. And why doesn't the news media look at that? What was his political affiliation? Who did he vote for? What does he want? You'll never hear it. You'll never hear it. But because they were majority, and there were some Democrats down there too, because even Democrats like country music. Because of that, it is not racially motivated. It's politically motivated. I think he is another one in the line of the Clinton machine that have died under mysterious death or circumstances. And there's nothing we will know about it. But understand this. It's a conspiracy to destroy the American way of life. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I said this is one man's opinion. You don't have to believe me. And I'm not going to sit there and say we'll agree to disagree. We won't have to do that either. What we do have to do is understand we need to speak out. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, we need to get in the room and go over the issues. And understand there were thousands of Democrats who did not want government-controlled health care. Yet, look what the Democrats did. They passed. Only Democrats. Republicans refused to go along with it. Only the Democrats passed government-controlled health care. Even though their own people said we don't want it. That's what the American Democratic Party thinks about the American people. They don't care what you think. They know better than you do. That's why 47% of the American women voted Republican, because they're not going to have a party tell them what they need to think and what they don't think. Again, God bless, take care, and we'll talk soon.